This is Larry Hama, and you're listening to the LONGBOX CRUSADE. What's in your long box?
The LONGBOX CRUSADE presents
G.I. Joe Chronicles.
Don't they realize they're dealing with Destro?
When I true scud bucket, they're gonna scrape you off the walls with a squeegee.
Now stop sputtering like a wet toaster and get busy!
Welcome to G.I. Joe Chronicles. I'm one of your commanders, Pat Sampson, codename DJ Kristatos. And joining me, as always, is my battle buddy in this operation, Jarrod Ulbrich, codename Death Probe.
That is a prescription for danger.
And he's Kristatos. All the green shirts tuning in for the podcast. Welcome back to Fort Longbox. We definitely appreciate you turning your ComSat dial to our program as we talk G.I. Joe comics and we chronicle our way through G.I. Joe Special Missions by Marvel on this episode. Next episode, we will return to our coverage of G.I. Joe America's Elite. But for this episode, we are back in 1986. I think we might have just flipped to 1987, but we're going to be covering the 1986 series of G.I. Joe Special Missions. On this episode of G.I. Joe Chronicles, DJ Kristatos and I are going to rotate in a special ops guest for the show. For this episode, our special ops guest is, to no one's surprise, Jim Meal, a.k.a. codename Jim the Joe Junkie. Welcome back to the pit, Jim.
Thanks for having me back again. It's been a while. Oh, wait. That was just last month. Never mind.
It was. It feels like just moments ago. It does.
Just like a couple days ago.
I'm so glad we installed the tunnel that goes directly from the outpost to Fort Longbox's pit here.
Makes travel a lot better, but it doesn't matter what weather or anything. I can make it through, and yeah, I appreciate it.
There's a tunnel. You didn't tell me that, Jarrod.
Oh, we weren't supposed to tell him that, were we?
Oh,
I have to travel and...
Oh, right. Well, Pat, what do you think about that? I want Jim to answer a get to know Jim's G.I. Joe taste question for this episode. We are going to look at comic books. I want to know what your favorite Marvel era G.I. Joe cover is and what your favorite Special Missions cover is.
Wow. That's really difficult.
It is tough. It is tough. You can just shoot from the hip. What pops in your mind? Maybe that'll help.
Well, I have to go with issue 88, the one with Python Patrol. That was my first G.I. Joe comic I ever bought. Now, not going off nostalgia, I would have to go with, I think it's issue 63 with Snake Eyes and Scarlet walking through the minefield.
Oh, that's a good one, too.
Oh, that I know it. I know it immediately. You just mentioned the cover, and I got the mental image.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was a Zek era cover.
Yes, issue 63. And it was a cover artist, Mike Zett.
Boom! Put it all together on this show.
Oh, yes. Without including nostalgia, it would be issue 63. Nostalgia would be 88. Now, Special Missions, I'm going to have to go with number 28. The final issue with all of the aircraft on it.
Okay.
Oh,
if you remember that one.
Yes.
That's a Andy Kubert, I believe.
I loved his video game where you're the little orange guy and you hop from.
That's Kubert.
Oh, my.
Not Kubert.
I got it.
K, not a Q.
Yeah, I like when he's with Ernie.
That's just Bert.
Oh.
Like when he was in Smokey and the Bandit.
Yes.
It's Burt Reynolds. Anyway, thank you, Jim. I had to remember what the hell we were talking about. Thank you, Jim. Pat, you want to weigh in with any favorite covers? I'll give you 30 seconds or let's go.
Special Missions number 1.
Hell yeah.
And, oh boy, it's hard on the Joe one. So, I'll do everybody's favorite, 21, because I'm sure I'm going to have to answer again some other time.
Yep. I immediately think of, I think it's 7 for G.I. Joe, the back-to-back Stalker and Colonel Brekoff cover.
Good one.
Gosh, I like that cover a lot. And yes, I would probably pick G.I. Joe Special Missions 1, but just for flavor differences, let's go with, I think it's 6. Is that the one where Outback is hiding out under the bridge in the snow? That's kind of cool.
That's another good one.
Man, there's so many good ones. All right, now that we talked a little bit about fun covers of the past, let's talk to Pat about this episode's intelligence report.
All right, for this mission, we will be covering G.I. Joe Special Missions number 3. Publisher was Marvel. It's got a cover date of February 1987. Writer was Larry Hama. Penciler, Herb Trimpe. Inker is Herb Trimpe. Colorist is Bob Sharon. Letterer is Phil Felix. And cover art goes to Mike Zeck.
Zeck. No Beatty. Zeck. No Beatty. Zeck.
But no Beatty.
At least that's what it said in my research. If Beatty was to call me up tomorrow and be like, "Hey, yo, I inked that," I believe him.
I believe it too.
But just looking at it, I don't know. Might have been one where Zeck did all the duties. Let's just go with that.
Okay, and it could be. And speaking about the cover, let's go ahead and Death Probe. Take us through the cover description.
Okay.
Take cover!
A standard 80s G.I. Joe logo is smaller across the top, making room for the larger block letters, white with black highlights, this time that says Special Missions. Duke stands in the yellow corner box, and it still reminds us that it's Marvel's 25th anniversary. The main action is another intense moment. Crankcase drives a tricked-out minivan while shooting an Uzi out the window as Leatherneck lays down fire from the pop-up sunroof with his M16, and everyone's favorite Ranger Stalker is rocking a street sweeper minigun mounted to the van's open starboard side door. Oh, and the van is airborne as it's ramping off some rubble right into some panicked soldiers that are firing at the Joes. Do you, Pat?
Thank you, Jarrod, for that cover description. Let's go ahead and give it some discussion. Jim, what are your thoughts on this cover?
Whenever I think of Special Missions, this is one of the covers that I think of. It's, we already talked about our favorites, but it is one that I'm like, yeah, I remember there was one with a van on it. Very A-team looking van.
Nice. Good. Yeah.
Which,
I love it when the cover comes together like that.
Yeah. Good one, Pat.
I guess.
But I like the point of view that we're sitting at. You're sitting there, these guys are running away from the van. Just the action. I really like it.
I think I get that feeling too when I'm now looking at this like, oh man, that van's going to come right for me. I'm like one of those guys going, don't hurt me.
Mm-hmm. How does it go?
Don't hurt me. Yep, that's about it. You know what I really like, and Jarrod mentioned it when he called it out, is I like the Special Missions. I like that it says G.I. Joe and then Special Missions. And to me, that always just brings like a warm feeling in my heart to see that logo when you see it. It's like, oh man, it's the Special Missions, because there was really something special about this.
And they went on a mission.
Yeah, definitely. I like the cover. I like the fading of the orange to like a lighter orange as it goes down. The van looks really cool. And Jim nailed it with that A-team vibe to it. It's definitely got that A-team vibe to it. And Stalker just hanging out with that gun. I didn't know that was a street sweeper, is what you called it, Jarrod?
Yeah, it's kind of like a nickname. Like if you think of like Arnold Schwarzenegger in T2, when he had that minigun,
Okay.
One of the nicknames for that is a street sweeper.
Okay. Because it reminds me of like somebody you'd see in a chopper, right?
Yeah.
They'd fly over so that's what they were doing.
Yep, that's a good sound effect.
Yep.
We've both done well on that tonight.
Jarrod, what's your thoughts on the cover?
Energy. It just has a lot of energy. What it lacks in background detail, which is none, it has energy. And they very cleverly, I don't want to say hid the lack of background, but they did a good job using an orange to light orange fade down the cover to give it some pizzazz. And I mean, we certainly can't fault Zeck for that, because it appears he did not have Beatty's help on this one. And I believe at this time Zeck's doing double duty. He's doing covers for both books. So let's give the man a break. It's still wonderful. He doesn't skimp on certain details like the shell casings coming out of the weapons, the return fire ricochets, the rubble that's flying. I like what the colorist did by using a one color for the guys in the foreground. It mutes them a little, so your eye is drawn to the action of the van. It's almost like a surprise as you're focused on the van, and then you widen your scope and you see all these guys scrambling at the bottom. It's just a really good lesson in coloring action, so your eye is drawn to where you want it to be drawn. So, yeah, cool cover, man.
I definitely agree on that. That definitely pulls you to the center of the action that's happening from the van. Well, now that we talked about the cover, let's go ahead and find out where we want to rate this on a scale of 1 to 10 flag points. 1 meaning you didn't like it at all, and 10 meaning it's perfect, and you should make this a automobile sales poster out of it for a really bitchin' van. Jim, 1 to 10. Are you going to buy this van from the poster or what?
No, I wouldn't buy this van. It's probably got a bunch of bullet holes in it, so I wouldn't be able to get it off the lot very far. But as a cover, as a poster, I'm probably around an 8. It's great action, but it just doesn't have that pop that some of the other covers that we've seen already in special missions and those we've seen before. But it is up there with, I'm at an 8.
All right, understandable. Jarrod, where do you fall on this one?
One thing I meant to point out that I didn't, just a slight detail that I think is great, is the van is going airborne. And so Zek has drawn the tires they're kind of tucked in a little bit as if the shocks are going into effect. It's a neat little motion detail of the van going airborne. And
that is what happens when vehicles go airborne. When all that design, vehicles
like gravity just goes boom.
It does. The mechanical parts on the vehicles are designed to have that pressure. So when the vehicle levels out or on the ground, they're straight. You lift it off the ground, they pull in. So Jarrod's correct.
The man knows his vehicles. It's almost like he's dedicated a portion of his life to this kind of thing. But yeah, I am going to go ahead and stake out 2 cool guys on 8 Island. You're welcome to join if you want, Pat. I think it's a great cover. It not quite in league with the amazing number 1. I think I gave 1 a 10. I think I gave 2 a 9. Mm-hmm. This one gets an 8. Even though it does have Jason's rule that it has Stalker on it. So I'd be interested to see if Jason would I bet Jason would put it at a 9 because of Stalker on the minigun. Just guessing. Anyway, what do you got, Pat?
Boy, do I want to be in that crowd? Or do I not want to be in a crowd? Do I get in the van? Do I not get in the van? What do I want to do? Do I want to be on the team? Do I not want to be on the team? You know what? I'm on the team. Of course I'm on the team.
3 cool guys.
At an 8. This is, as Jim mentioned, it's an iconic cover. When I see this cover, I know what it's about. It reminds me what's in this issue and what to expect. I don't know all the details when I look at it, but I do know that there's really some really cool bitchin' van action that's happening in this one.
Just so unlike you, Pat. I'm not even going to bleep it.
But it's cool. That's because it's cool. How else can you describe it? This is a totally 80s cover, totally 80s action going on here. And
I wish someone had airbrushed a unicorn on the side or a wizard. That's more 70s, I guess.
True. All right. Well, with the cover out of the way, let's go back to Death Probe for the story synopsis in our mission brief.
Can do, Pat.
Look in the eyes of a hero and see the sacrifice within. There's no way out for the hero. He only lives to fight again. Heroes stand tall, not for fortune or fame, but death, freedom, because we all just wanted the same. Real heroes don't give
Stalker, Slipstream, Leatherneck, and Crankcase are in the Middle East on a 2-fold mission. The first part of their mission is to get the air defense layout for the local enemy airbase, which, thanks to former American mercenary pilot Deke, they're able to transmit to Ace and his squadron of F-111s and F-14s. Unfortunately, Deke is caught and tortured until giving up the secret location where the small Joe team is hiding. The Joes have a tricked-out van driven by Crankcase, and they put it to good use to bust through the approaching enemy forces and get to the airfield for their true mission. The air assault on the airfield defenses is just a diversion so the Joe team can steal a high-tech Russian surveillance aircraft, which, thanks to some quick thinking from Slipstream and the ultimate sacrifice by Deke, they are able to mark this mission as accomplished.
Now, back to G.I. Joe.
Okay, guys, it's time to do highs and lows and what those. And I'm going to mix things up and go first this time. That's right. I said it. I'm going off script. But I had something on my brain because Pat said he saw the cover and immediately remembered the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
I bet you've probably reread these, Pat.
Oh, well, yeah, I've read these several different times, yeah.
Joe Special Missions is a book that I read when they were coming out. I read this in 1987.
Okay.
It's probably
Where
on
were
stands in 86.
Were you in the States or were you overseas?
I was still living in Texas, about to move to Germany.
Okay.
I'm realizing the more and more we do these episodes that I have basically read them maybe once or twice. I haven't read them since the 80s.
Oh, all right.
So I'm in this perfect sweet spot of nostalgia of going, yeah, this looks familiar, but I don't really remember the story a lot. Like, as I'm reading it, I'm getting flashes of like, yeah, okay, I remember that. And it's just so much fun.
Yeah, it is.
To do that. It's like, there's something really cool about having something from your childhood. It's almost like you had maybe a favorite toy or a board game or something that you played maybe when you were 12 or so years old, and then you put it away and you never even saw it again until here we are, 30, 40 years later. And you break it back out, you haven't even thought about it, right? And you're like, oh my God. Yeah. That's how I feel when I read this. It's so much fun. Oh, awesome. So I'm going to just bust out a Jarrod nostalgic high that this series in particular, as I'm reading it, is just tickling my tummy feathers, Pat. And with that just positivity note, let's kick it off to Jim for the round one.
I hate to bring it down a little bit, but my first one is Deke is kind of a jerk.
Hey,
at the beginning.
Hey,
I know, right? I know. Hey.
Oh, Deke.
Let me explain. I'll get it better. At the beginning, he's kind of a jerk, but at the end, he redeems himself by sacrificing and being it so the Joes can finish the mission. I like how Larry always uses these characters one time, but you get a feel for who they are and what they stand for. He uses characters in the story to explain that, where he used Stalker to explain why
he did
is that way. But Deke's honor won out when he gave in to the torture, but then at the end he helped the Joes and complete the mission. So it was a negative. I turned it into positive. So
yeah, I think it's really good writing by Larry, because Deke, he starts out with the Joes. He's a little maybe too cavalier. He does give up the Joes after some pretty hefty torture. I mean, he got the crap beat out of him. So I don't really begrudge him too much for that. But I think the point is that when we meet Deke hates himself. He hates who he's become. He hates the circumstances that life gave him to get where he is. And he finally does get an opportunity for redemption, and it requires the ultimate sacrifice. And he takes it because I think he's tired of being who he is. Yeah. And that is a lot of really deep and powerful storytelling to put in a 22-page book based off of a toy line.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm going to take it on from here, Jarrod. And because that is one of the highs I want to say about this and some of the special the missions that we've covered and we'll get to cover is Larry doesn't hold back on these. He continues to, these are the deeper ones, right? Special missions are the make you think and make you feel missions. They're special in a really great way. There was torture in this one. There was tragedy in this one with Deke and where he was and what got him there. He was a POW. So that couldn't have been good for 3 years he was there. And, Stalker kind of speaks up for why this guy is doing what he does. He's not like a traitor to the United States. He's almost like he came home and they turned his back on him. So he's like, well, I got to make some money. What can I do? I'm good at flying planes. So I'm going to go in over here. I'm going to fly some planes for somebody else. They're going to pay me lots of money. Tries to do good and gets beat up for it. And in the end, he does a good sacrifice. But wow, Larry doesn't hold back on even the killing of certain characters Deke dies in this one or just other people. You really don't see that in the other comic book, but you see that in Joe. And you know what? I really appreciate it. And I think from these missions, I think it opened up the door for what we see in America's Elite, in the Devil's Due Run, in some of those darker things. You see some more heavy-sided things happening.
Yeah, we're 3 issues into this now, right? 4 if you count the
other one, yeah.
The other one in
Zero
50, right? Mm-hmm. And that one had terrorists taking over a plane.
Yeah.
And number 1 had roots in reality of a downed Russian submarine, and it dealt with the defection of a Russian official, which was a real thing at the time. And then the next one had the the Nazis hiding out in South America with the Israelis tracking them down, which is a very real thing. And then this one deals with conflict in the Middle East, which thankfully goes away. I'm just kidding. It's still there. It's still there to this day. My dad's been over there fighting that war. My brother's been to that war. I've been to that war. Wow. It's unfortunately, it just is. And so, yes, you're right. This is Larry. And I think it's important to note, Pat, that I think at this time, or at least around this era, Larry is like an assistant editor or helping editor on the NOM.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of puts his headspace in that as well. I think I really see it in this issue when Deke tells his story. Because, soldiers coming home, and airmen like he was coming home from Vietnam, it was like the first war where the guys coming home were not heralded as heroes. Yeah. The VA failed a lot of those guys. I mean, that failure is why we have a pretty decent VA system that we have now. They just, no one worked with Deke to find him something to do or to help him with his PTSD from being a POW. They were just like, nah, too much of a risk, can't use you. It really reminds me of Rambo. Near the end when he has his big speech, it's a tearjerker. He's I'm over there, I'm in charge of $1 million equipment. I come over here, I can't get a job parking cars. True. And Larry channels that. Welcome to the most depressing episode of G.I. Joe Chronicles.
Now, I don't mean to make it depressing at all, but I just hats off to Larry for what he was doing here. Just
dude knows what it felt like. Yeah, he put it on the page.
Yep, and people respect that. I totally respect.
Yeah, let's go back to the top of our real order and go back to Jim. Jim, do you have anything to add, or you want to bring up a new topic? Maybe something fun.
I was going to bring up something fun. I kind of alluded to it when we were talking about the cover with the A-Team van. When I read this issue, and those that listen to my show, Outpost, know that I had to go back and get some of these issues. So when I found this one and I reread it, I was like, that's an A-Team van right there where they go. And I remember one specifically, they were on a farm or something, and they took their van and put metal shielding in front of it, and they did all this other stuff. And that I thought that's pretty cool. So that and the way they work together, you saw all the Joes. I think they mentioned it with Slipstream. Well, why is a fighter jockey down here on a ground pounding? Well, you got 3 guys welding and bolting and cutting with a torch, and so they're outside their element. Larry's using them for different things to get the mission done. So
that was like the only part I thought was unrealistic, because if I remember correctly, like Deke was giving Slipstream crap. Yeah, but I'm like, Deke, you're a flyboy too. You guys have more in common. Why does Leatherneck have to defend the Air Force guy? Yeah. The Marine is defending the Air Force guy. In real life, this makes no sense. I'm here to tell you right
now. That would never happen, would it?
No.
Yeah. But I think that was the cool thing that Larry did in this, is it made you think of why is Slipstream here? What are they doing? If they were just scoping out the air base, then you find out what the real, and here's the real mission.
Because I sat there, I was ready to be so frumpy. Because I was like, Slipstream has no reason to be on this mission. Because remember, I don't remember the story. And then I get to that development, I was like, got me again, Lawrence.
And that's so many of these issues, special mission issues, is you start reading and you're like, what's he getting at? What's the point? And then it just the last 2 pages, it just, boom, there it is. And you go back and reread it and you see all the clues leading up to it, what they were supposed to be doing.
He was M. Night Shyamalan before M. Night Shyamalan was M. Night Shyamalan.
He was.
Ding dong, yep.
What do you got, Pat?
Well, I'm going to, again, carry off of that, what we're talking about. And as I started to read this and then finally figured out, they're here for this plane. It reminded me of that Clint Eastwood movie. Firefox, yeah, where they had to go and steal, the secret plane so they can get it back. I'm like, oh, wow, this is really cool. And to figure out that, they can't just fly it anymore. Now they got to find a bigger plane to put a plane within a plane, right?
It's like Inception.
Yeah. And
Russian
it was
nesting
cool.
dolls.
Yeah.
Quite lit Russian planes. That works really well, Jim.
So I thought that was another cool idea. And then just to see what they do when, the mission didn't go right away as it should have been, because the place gets busted up. They get figured out. Then they get out of there. Now they got to go get this plane, and the engine's out or whatever they needed in the plane. They can't fly it anymore. So now you got to go to plan B. And oh, by the way, your own guys are blowing up those planes that you need to get this.
Oh, man. Yeah, Pat, I actually really love that moment because you know me, I'm former Air Force, and Air Force in media rarely gets an opportunity to shine. Like, I could count on one hand the amount of Air Force oriented movies there are that are like good and show us in a positive light. And G.I. Joe's is kind of the same way. The Air Force guy, I mean, I think Ace gets a lot of love in G.I. Joe, I think, to be fair, but I thought it was really cool that the Air Force, I think Slipstream's a first lieutenant, maybe a captain, he's a young officer. And the fact that he thought on his feet and was like, wait a second, basically got out his tape measure and he was like, I think we can, you know, I really like that. Because like I said, as an Air Force guy, you just don't see it that much. So I was really pleased that Slipstream was he wasn't just fly the plane. He was also a problem-solving member of the Joe team, which I really liked.
Yeah.
I guess the last thing that I will add is I liked how Larry clearly is building in his military knowledge. He has Ace up there flying around. He's basically kind of getting the information, and he's sort of the liaison for the airstrike mission. And they bring in, I believe, the AWACS gets mentioned. They bring in, I don't know if they call them out by name, but I saw F-111s, which are also known as aardvarks. Those were often specially outfitted to be anti-SAM, anti-aircraft.
Yeah, they did call those out.
F-111s, and I felt like the Navy was also there. And those were the art on that. I was like, is that an F-18 or an F-14? I think they might be 14s the way they were drawn, but they're also special planes that get specially fitted to do those kind of interdiction missions. They block radar, they seek out and destroy SAMs. Basically, it's kind of cool. Just in case you guys didn't know this, like, the way a SAM works, like the bad guy anti-aircraft missiles, they send out a signal to track the aircraft, right? Like a radio wave signal. Okay. And so what these Navy planes are outfitted to do, or the F-111s, they find that signal, and their weapons are specifically built to do two things. One, to jam it, and then the missile itself is sent to go find the source that, like, the missile goes to where the jamming is. Signal. So it's like a double thing. It's like a double whammy. So this issue is really how I was taught when I was in the Air Force, how, you know, airstrikes work. You send in the first ones to go in are the guys to shut down the whole, you don't want to deal with anti-aircraft guns or missiles. So they send these guys in. They used to do it with F-4 Phantoms. That was called the Wild Weasel mission. And yeah, they go in just to blow up all the anti-aircraft stuff so that when the big slow bombers show up, it's not a problem.
What is used when they call it painting
the target?
Yeah.
That's basically like a laser designator. That's a neat thing too. And that's used on a variety of different aircraft to include Army helicopters with their missiles. What's neat about those is I'm going to use the helicopter as an example. You can use an airplane too. The helicopter itself will basically, it's almost like putting a laser pointer, like laze the target or paint the target. And then the missile basically says, I'm going to follow that laser to where it's pointed.
Okay.
And what's neat about that is you can even have like ground guys, like maybe a Force Recon, advanced Marines or soldiers in a city, and they can have just the laser designator, and they can laze a target, and the helicopter can be a mile away and launch its missile, and then it'll come hit that laser beam and go, boom, this is where I'm going. So the guy on the ground is actually painting the target. So it can be done from the aircraft or from the ground.
Okay.
I think is pretty cool. You can hear I get excited about this stuff. I've been around this stuff my whole life. My dad's a attack helicopter pilot. I've been down here by Fort Rucker, now Fort Novosel, for years and years. So yeah, this is all in my wheelhouse.
It is very interesting to me. I appreciate the knowledge.
Almost sounds like you've done this before.
It's like I have a little bit of experience with it.
Now I know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe.
Jim, do you have anything final parting shots?
Other thing I was going to bring up was the use of Leatherneck. He was the one with the grenade launcher, his action figure.
Yes.
With his M16 had the grenade launcher underneath it. How Larry still used the toyetic parts of these figures, and he still stayed true to that. That was the only other thing I was going to add.
You know, I'll tack onto that by saying I think it's neat. We've talked about this before, how special missions kind of allows people that don't get a lot of limelight some limelight. So it was neat to see Crankcase get a little love.
Yeah.
Pat?
Oh, and that too. You know, and I'll pile on to that. I think that Larry is now able to play with these toys and play with the toys how he would tactfully use it. He's like, I'm going to pick this guy for this mission because he's got this weapon and he's got that, and actually showcase them in what they do. Crankcase, yeah, he's going to build this, this bitchin' van. He's going to build this cool 18 van. It's going to be bitchin', and it's going to do what it needs to do. And I think that's cool because
and of course, Stalker's a great pick for this mission too because he speaks the language.
Yep.
And there are a lot of very dark-skinned and African Middle Eastern people, so he can blend really well.
Yeah, it's just Larry using now the toys, even though he needs to place a little bit or whatever, but he's using them to his advantage now, not the Hasbro's advantage to sell a toy. He's using it for his storytelling.
Yep. This is a great series. I'm so glad we're covered. All right, DJ Kristatos, I'm going to hand it back to you so we can do the IG's report on the combat readiness of G.I. Joe Special Missions number 3.
And for those of you who don't speak military, that means we're going to score this issue's story on the same 1 to 10 flag point scale we used earlier. So, Jim, on a scale of 1 to 10 flag points, how many are you willing to clip out and send in for this issue?
This is a special mission issue, so it automatically gets 8.
Ooh.
So I'm going with a 9. If Joe November was here, But.
So what you're saying, Jim, is you're going with a strong 9.
A strong 9. Correct. Yes.
That is very acceptable on this one. Jarrod, are you with Jim on a strong 9, or are you going a little higher or a little lower?
I'm absolutely with Jim on a strong 9, but I'm going to bump it all the way up. I'm going full speed on this as a 10.
Yo, Joe!
And it really goes back to how I kicked off the discussion round. I have so much enthusiasm for it just because it is that book that I read when I was, what did we say? This was 10 or 11 and never touched again until now. So it's just this flood of amazing, I got the feeling about halfway through. I was like, I don't think Deke's going to make it. And just to kind of I'm getting these feelings like it's all coming back to me. So a lot of it has to do with my nostalgia, but a lot of it has to do with what we talked about as well. Like Larry just humanizing a guy like Deke, who is in here for 22 pages, printed on some old newsprint, yet Larry's able to make us care about him and understand him and value his sacrifice. It's just great. So I'm going to give it a 10. I think a lot of 10s are going to be coming their way for special missions from me.
Yeah. I am going to be with Jim. It's a strong 9 for me. I didn't know what I was getting into. And when I started reading it, like you, the rediscovering of it was amazing. And then this discussion we have had on this one has also helped just open my eyes up a little bit more to it. So it's definitely a strong 9. And, you showed me this cover in a year from now, I'll be like, oh yeah. And what I will really remember now is the discussions we've had.
Yep.
So, all right. Now that we have the rating out of the way, let's go ahead and find out who is going to get a Silver Star medal or a Silver Snake for sneaky snaky-tude.
Now that you mention it, I don't think there was any Cobra dudes in this whole issue.
Well, you got the general or the Sharif guy. He didn't like it.
So he's going to rock the Casbah.
Well, the Air Force came and rocked the Casbah. But yeah, that's another nice thing too, is some of these special missions, they're not really Cobra related at all. They're just Joe's being Joe's, which is really neat. But going back to this, who had a Silver Star medal or who was a Silver Snake? Jim, what is your choice?
I almost feel guilty going first because I'm going to pick the obvious one. I'm going
I think
Deke.
we all are.
I think, yeah.
I'm going with
Who's it going to be, Jim? Who's it going to be?
Deke.
Oh, Deke. Yep. I'm going with Deke too.
Yeah. The short time you knew him, he went from this kind of a down and out jerk to a hero, which he was back when he was in the military. So it, really just his storyline, you get to know him. Deke's the Silver Star.
I agree with you as well. Jarrod?
Let's make it 3 for Deke. I forgot to mention that I did like the little insight for the other mercenary pilots that work there. You know, Sharif comes running. I was like, yeah, I need you guys to scramble. And they're like, I don't think we're going to do that today. But yeah, Deke's the ringleader there. And he definitely had a sad story that had a good redemption for him. Yeah, I won't forget him anytime soon.
No, I totally agree. And with that, I'm going to hand it over back to Jarrod for his segment called Death Probe's Toy Chest.
It's here, the G.I. Joe collection, each sold separately. G.I. Joe from Hasbro.
Thank you, Pat. Here in Death Probe's Toy Chest, I'll take something or someone featured in this issue and give you a brief toy history on it. For this issue, I have selected, because I doubt we're going to get a lot more opportunities, I have selected Slipstream. Not a Joe that shows up a lot in stuff, but let's talk about Slipstream's toy.
You're looking at an incredible new plane, the G.I. Joe Conquest X-30.
The G.I. Joe Conquest X-30. Imagine being aboard it as it takes flight.
There's Cobra!
The G.I. Joe Conquest X-30 is gonna meet Cobra in a big dog fight. And Cobra's gonna know you can't beat G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe! American hero!
Live the adventure of G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe Conquest X-30 comes with pilot.
Joe!
He was the Conquest X-30 pilot, which was the forward swept wing design aircraft that was experimental in the actual military back in this time. But I don't think they ever actually brought any forward swept design into military service, but it was definitely something they were looking at back in the 80s. His name is Gregory B. Boyajian. He is from Provo, Utah. He's part of Series 5, which came out in 1986, and he was discontinued in 1988. Slipstream had a tan flight suit with a dark brown helmet and black high-altitude G-suit riggings. Came with no accessories. And because he has such a unique name, Boyajian, I decided to look it up.
Oh.
And it really matches well with what it says on his file card. His file card, he says he speaks Armenian, Greek, and French, which makes a lot of sense because Boyajian is an Armenian name. And I thought, oh, what a great attention to detail. But, you know, that's probably Larry still writing cards or some genius at Hasbro's putting the puzzle pieces together. But yeah, it's an Armenian name. He's an Armenian American, and that's why he also speaks 3 languages. There are currently, as of this recording, which is January of 2024, 4 versions of Slipstream. Let's do an around the room. Do you have him? Did you have him back in the day? We all know Jim has him, but when did he acquire him? What do you got, Jim?
I didn't acquire him until a few years ago, again, probably in a toy lot. And I have 3 of them, and they all have brown noses. All the paint's wore off their nose.
Oh, that brown noser slips.
I know. But
did he only come with the Conquest?
Yes.
In all 4 versions?
Oh, I don't know about all 4 versions, but probably.
I
have a single version of him
on that. I know that this is the only vintage version.
Okay.
So anything that would be would have to be 94, I'm not real sure of. I mean, the Conquest was released later in the modern era, so I'm guessing he probably came with it then.
Yeah, because I thought they re-released the Conquest did they do a Tiger one of the Conquest, or did they do like the reversal Python Patrol? Yeah,
Python Patrol.
Interesting. I did not have him.
Okay. Just a fun fact about him: in his original 1986 version, there's actually 2 versions of him. I don't know if you know this, Jim. You know probably because you know a lot about him. But it's a very subtle. But they have one called Teeth version and no teeth, because it's like basically the size of his little smile under his mustache. Apparently, there's one that shows more teeth and one that shows less teeth. And yes, I have Slipstream, but I never owned the Conquest X-30. So I'm thinking that kind of like Jim, I probably picked him up at a yard sale and a bundle of stuff. If I had to guess, I'd say probably in the early 2000s. But he is standing in my cabinet as we speak. Let's move on. Pat, what is next?
Well, Jarrod, I'm glad you asked. Next up is our feedback segment called Combat Comms.
Communications officer, code name breaker.
As always, we want to start off Combat Comms with a roster of our battle-hardened Crusader Club veterans. These are the fine folks that have joined our Crusaders Club. They enjoy early access to special Longbox video episodes, free raffle giveaways, voting on show programming, earn seats on episodes just like Jim has. Being a Crusader Club gets you first dibs at being a guest. So make sure you sign up. And so much more. So these are the folks reaping the benefits and giving some much appreciated support to the show.
Mr. Alan W. Wright, the bold outlaw himself.
Angelica Wolf.
Oh. Auburn Elvis.
Bill Beer.
Braxton Underwood.
Clinton Robinson.
Captain Entropy.
Clark Westfield.
Dave Collins, the Battle Wagon.
Battle Wagon.
Ezra Gallo.
Gary V.
Gene Hendricks.
Gerald O.D. Green.
Heinz K.
Jason Keene.
Jason Lady.
Jeremy L.
Jim Jarman. I hope you like Jim Jarman too.
Jim Meal, a.k.a. Jim the Joe Junkie.
Joe Thomas.
John Watson.
Josh Strickland.
Candace Ward.
Kathy Bright, the MVP.
Matt and Lizzie Passo.
Mark Ross.
Maxwell Traver.
Miranda W.
P.D. Devens.
Paul Hicks.
Rick from Jeff and Rick Present.
Rob Morgan.
Samantha Maney.
Sean Urbanski.
Spidey 67.
Spread Sheets.
Steve Cronin.
Tim Price.
Tony Pennington.
And the Toronto Cop.
If we missed anyone on our list, we apologize. Please keep in mind that we record these episodes well in advance of release. So if you are a recent addition, we should be adding you soon. But still, don't worry about it. Relax, guys. Just let us know that we missed you by sending an email to contact@longboxcrusade.com and we will get it all straightened out. So you might be asking yourself, how do I become a Crusaders Club member? You know what? It's simple. Just head on over to patreon.com and search for Longbox Crusade. For as little as $1 a month, you'll get access to the amazing world of the Crusader Club. Come and check it out. As a reminder, you can also leave us a voicemail by calling 707-532-5269. That's 707-532-LBOX.
Pick up the phone.
Well, lads, that will bring us to mission complete status for this episode of G.I. Joe Chronicles. If you'd like to hear more from us in the realm of comic books, action films, vintage TV, movies, serials, and so much more, check out the entire Longbox Crusade Network. DJ Kristatos, where can they find that?
Well, Jarrod, I am glad you asked. You can find it on pretty much all the podcatchers that are out there. And if you don't, go ahead and send an email to contact@longboxcrusade.com and we'll get it all squared away so you can listen to it. Otherwise, go to www.longboxcrusade.com. We're also on X, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, all at Longbox Crusade. Back to you, Jarrod.
If you'd like to chat with us online, we can be found at... Back to you, Pat.
Well, Jarrod, I'm glad you asked. I can be found at Kristatos01 on the X. Jarrod, back to you.
I am at Yard Sale Artist on X, Facebook, Instagram. You can find my artwares at www.theyardsaleartist.com. You can also find me at your local Chinese buffet trying the sesame chicken. Jim?
You can find me on Facebook as Jim Meal, Jimmiel, or on X as Jim the Joe Junkie.
Thank you all for joining us for this episode of G.I. Joe Chronicles. We'll see you on the battlefield next episode, where we will return to our coverage of the 2006 Devil's Due series, G.I. Joe America's Elite number 4, The Reckoning. Until then, platoon, fall out.
Yo, Joe.
The music themes for this show are done by musical genius Joe November. Please check out his SoundCloud at Josephlin99. That's Joseflin 99. You will not regret it. And we had to re-record that because I made a stupid barbecue ribs joke the first time, so I had to re-record it so I could make up a new stupid joke. That was on me. All right. Okay, so I'm going to talk more about it. So The Apache helicopter uses the Hellfire missile, which is a laser guided missile like that. My dad flew the older Cobra, which looks like the Firefly, the Dragonfly. And that's more of a Vietnam era, but they kind of kept refurbishing it. But it fires predominantly tow missiles, which is a wire guided missile, different from a laser guided. All right, so check this out. When he fires, it's basically like now my dad has like a joystick. And he's actually controlling the missile because it has a literal, it's like spooling out wire behind it as it's flying.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
The target. And then in the next generation, they use laser, which you think is a huge upgrade, right? Well, guess what happened during Desert Storm? When helicopters fly low across the desert, they kick up a lot of sand. And the laser has a real hard time with that, but the wire guided does not. So I believe there were more tanks destroyed because that's what attack helicopters mainly do is hunt tanks. More tanks in Desert Storm destroyed via old school wire guided missile than laser, newer technology laser missile because of the sand kick up.
Wow.
This has been my TED Talk. I don't know if this is going to make it into the show, maybe in the outtakes.
That's it helps because then when you read this stuff, it definitely helps me understand what Larry was thinking or what whoever is writing a military kind of story that now I can understand what's happening. So I appreciate
to help. I love running my mouth. You know that. Speaking of which,
now I know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I.